Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Friends, before I start today's talk, I like to apologize, to say very sorry for not being able to give the talk last time. But it is the same talk that I will be giving today to you. That is the other part of nutrition. I hope you can remember what we did before that. That was on edible food and contact. So today we will discuss the next two factors of nutrition, that is mental volition and consciousness. So these two are even more difficult than the earlier two, because now edible food and contact are things that we could, touch and, feel and all that. But mental volition and consciousness are so subtle that you cannot touch or anything like that. Only thing is you might feel them. So, though all four are connected, for understanding these concepts, it's easy when they are dealt with separately. Here we will discuss mental volition as related to nutrition, first of all. Now, volition or will or intention causes the actual realization of whatever is wished. Now, if you wish to do something, it is that volition that helps you to do that. Chetana, volition, intention, etc., is defined as a mental factor that moves or urges the mind in a particular direction, gaining something or an object. It might be wholesome, it might be unwholesome. This could bring pleasure or pain, depending on the bodily, verbal, or mental volitions. Now, these three. Bodily is called kaya. Then verbal is called vachi. This is in Pali. And mental volitions are called mano sanchetana. So these are brought about due to ignorance. It is ignorance that makes us do things, right? We don't understand that. Or else it could be urged by others. We may do things urged by others. The Buddha says, when one understands the nutriment of mental volition, one understands the three forms of thirst or tanha. Now let us see what these three are. Thirst or tanha, that is called craving, right? Craving for sensual pleasure. That is the first one out of the three. Craving for sensual pleasure. That is called kama tanha. Kama tanha. Then the second one is bhava tanha. Bhava tanha, that is craving for existence, to go on living, right? Then the third one is craving for non-existence, that is called vibhava tanha. These are the three kinds of tanha or thirst. It's called thirst in Buddhism. Mental volition is at the root of existence or continuity. You see, it's mental volition that makes us go from birth to birth. For it creates the will to live, wanting to live on, right? However difficult it is, to exist or to re-exist. That means to get into another birth, to become more and more. Now, this could apply to even collecting acquisition, you see. That also can be put into this category. This is done by the actions, both good and bad. That's called kusala kamma. Kusala kamma. Kusala kamma, right? Kamma means intentional action, not all actions. All actions are not kamma, but intentionally done, it is kamma. It can be good, it can be bad. This kamma is a great force or energy that continues to produce rebirth according to one's present actions. According to what we do now, we get a rebirth, and it depends on what we have done now. When we accept impermanence, even if our health is, not good, even if it deteriorates, we can do our best to profit from the days and months left to us, so that it brings happiness to ourselves and others. Now, lots of people don't think of it in those terms, right? This force is just a movement. This force of kamma, it's an energy, it's a movement, it's moving all the time, changing. For example, like a flame that burns through the night. Now, let us say there is a lamp with an oil wick, an oil in it, and it is, or it can be a candle even, and it burns through the night. Now, we think that it is the same flame that goes on, but it is not so. It's not the same flame. Also, it isn't another. Further, we could compare it. Now, we could compare the same force or energy or kamma to a little embryo, the little embryo that grows into a child, and then little by little into an adult. So that is also another example of how things change from, but it's not the same thing that comes. Now, can you compare, can you say that the little child is the same as the adult? Can you? No. But at the same time, can you say it's not so also? No. So therefore, it's a little puzzling. Similarly, in the present life, also, one thought moment conditions the next thought moment. Now we think of something, then on top of that, another thought comes based on that. So that is what it means. This cycle is cut only when this thirst or tanha, the driving force, is stopped altogether. It's a very difficult thing, of course. The Buddha has said, life in any world is incomplete, unsatisfactory, the slave of craving. The Buddha has said that there are 31 realms. So in any of those realms, right? Can you see that all the evils of the world are due to this selfish craving? This is the first and second noble truths. Now, the first truth is dukkha, or suffering, or it can be unsatisfactoriness. And the second one is samudaya, or the cause of suffering, that is craving. But how this desire or thirst can produce re-existence or re-becoming is a problem that we cannot grasp. It's very difficult, like that's why lots of people do not believe in this rebirth. To understand this process, it's important to have an idea of karma and rebirth. The theory of karma is the theory of cause and effect. There is nobody doing anything, up there, counting our good actions and bad actions. But it's a natural law. Just like other laws, you see, that governs the world. According to Buddhism, volition, desire, energy, force do not stop with the non-functioning of the body at death, but continues to be recognized in the mind in other ways. That is generally called rebirth. The difference between birth and death is only a thought moment. The last thought moment, that is called chuti chitta, right? Chuti chitta. Chitta means the thought. Chuti means the, death. So the death thought or the chuti chitta conditions the first thought moment in the next life. That is called patisandhi chitta, right? I'm giving you these words in case, you come across them and then you don't understand. So remember these words. Chuti chitta is the last thought of the dying person. Patisandhi chitta is the first thought in the person who has got rebirth. So, sankhara is another name for mental volition. It also produces karma, which leads to continuity and rebirth. So you can see karma is related to rebirth. This is due to active volition. Active volition, that is, volition, if it is just a thought, it may not create so much karma, though it can create, but it's not as forceful as an active one, right? So this is due to active volition or intention. The Buddha explains how we should see the nutriment of mental volition so that it decreases craving. So you see, this intention can be one that increases our craving or it decreases our craving. So what we should do is to try and get it less, weaken it. This is a simile where, you see now this simile is based on the kind of punishment that was given at that time. But this is not actually what has happened. It is just a simile that the Buddha has given, right? So this is a simile where a charcoal pit, deeper than a man's height, filled with glowing coals, coals that are burning, is kept to punish criminals. Two strong men try to drag a man into it. The man wants to live and try to escape, for he knows he'll suffer and die. But he is not strong enough. Now this is the simile. Now let us see how we can unravel this simile and make it understandable in this context, that is in the context of karma, right? Now, the charcoal pit represents the cycle of existence. The cycle of existence, right? Going from birth to birth. That is the charcoal pit. Why is it given as a charcoal pit? Because there is so much suffering, right? Wherever we are born, right? So the man is the foolish worldling who is attached to existence. The two strong men are the wholesome and the unwholesome karma that he has done, right? Then the dragging towards the pit is like the worldlings. The worldling means the ordinary putujana, the ordinary man, man or woman, of course. You know, the worldlings piling up of karma that gives him a rebirth. You see, by piling up karma, good or bad, it could be good, it could be bad, whatever, that, you know, collecting karma is going to give him a rebirth. So that is what is understood by the two strong men dragging him to the pit. The pain of falling in is the suffering he has to undergo once he is reborn. Anyone here, can you say that you have not had suffering in this world after being reborn? Nobody can say that, right? So that is why the Buddha has compared this going from birth to this simile. Here, I like to mention that this imagery may not be suitable for everyone born into this world. For as we learn from the Dhamma, even those who have attained certain spiritual attainments are reborn again. Now, for instance, you know, there are 4 stages of spirituality. Stream entry, once returner, non-returner, Arahant. Now, Arahant will not be reborn again. But the other 3, out of the other 3, the first one, stream entrant, will be, not will be, but may be born 7 times. It can be less. It can be even once, right? So anyway, that good person also can be reborn even once, right? Or maybe 7 times. That is a stream enterer. Then the once returner, at least for once, right? At least for one time, will come back to this earth. So therefore, we cannot say that this simile is about everyone, not for this kind of person who is spiritual. This simile refers to the worldling or putujana, who cannot differentiate between wholesome or skillful actions and unwholesome or unskillful actions. We see some leaders who use their power to acquire more and more wealth. Others, again leaders, who want power at any cost and do not care how much their people suffer. Due to excess energy, we too may be dragged in a direction that we do not want to go, which may not be in our conscious mind. Our latent tendencies, you know, they are called latent tendencies, asavas, right? Latent tendencies or the unseen volitions, we cannot see them. They come up only at certain times due to certain situations, right? Unseen volitions for fame, ambition, desire, possessions may be very strong sources of food. That's why we should mindfully look into our deepest desires. Then we'll discover many sides or motives that pull us towards different directions that will ultimately harm us. But if seen early, we could stop them from coming into fruition. That is, that is putting it into action. The Buddha states, our deepest desires will take us either to a place of great happiness or to hell. That's why this search is important. If we have hatred, ill will, vengeance, etc., as our deepest desire, we will suffer terribly, like the man who was dragged into the glowing coals. In the case of bodily, verbal, and mental volitions, those are called Kaya Sankhara, Vachi Sankhara, and Mano Sankhara, generated by one's own wish. You see, these mental volitions are generated by one's own wish or urged by others. Others might, say, oh, you are very suitable for this position. Try to get it. You must, use your influence and get it. That kind of thing, right? Urged by others. Or by a knowledge of karma and its fruit. You see, there are some actions that we take knowing that this is going to bring good karma, or knowing knowing that its fruit will bring some kind of joy to us. That kind of karma is also done, right? So it can be, of course, causing pain or pleasure, bringing spiritual joy, right? If it's pleasure, it can bring spiritual joy. Other conditions that may add to good karma would be knowing one's responsibility for one's actions. Now, some people, when things have gone wrong, do not want to take the responsibility. But if we are able to take the responsibility, that's also a good karma. Good friendship. We must always develop good friendship, not the bad friendship where you are drawn towards bars and, towards gambling or alcohol or, that kind of thing. So you must have good friendship. Suitable talk. Don't go and talk about that one's or this one. Very often when people get together, they gossip. And that is also one of the bad karma of speech. So must be very careful about having suitable talk. You might think this is a very dry kind of existence where you don't have to have the freedom to talk about this one and that one, have a glass of wine and, that kind of thing. But once you get into that, you will see how pleasurable and how joyful that life is. Anyway, abandoning ill will, learning loving kindness, that is metta, and also the meditation, calming of distress in mental volition. Now, mental volition, how do we calm it? That is by seeing it. Seeing it when it comes into our mind, when a bad thought comes, you see it and then let go of it, right? So that is how we can calm down the distress in mental volition. Okay, now that is about mental volition. Now let us turn to consciousness. That is the fourth factor of nutrition. Now this is called Vijnana Ahara. Vijnana Ahara. Ahara means food. Vijnana is consciousness. The Buddha taught that consciousness is always continuing, like a stream of water. Vijnana is a mental force that activates the motionless material form or body. Now, our body by itself cannot do anything. Consciousness must come there for it to be active. Its function, the function of consciousness, is to know or understand. The Buddha says, what one intends, plans, whatever one has a tendency towards, become a basis for the support of consciousness. Now let us look at that a little bit. Now, when you say intents, what does that mean? That means all wholesome and unwholesome volition. That is what intention means. Then when you say one plans, that means the mental makeup of craving with greed and whatever one has, now craving means with greed. Always there is greed. So when you plan with greed, then that is what it means when you say plans, right? Then the next one is whatever one has a tendency towards. Now these are the Buddha's words, right? Tendency towards mean the underlying tendencies. Now asavas, they are called asavas. They are the things that are under our, consciousness inside. But when something happens or something comes up, this rises up. Otherwise, it's inactive. So that is why it's called underlying tendencies. It's under, not on the surface like other things, right? So now those can become the basis or the means or the condition for the maintaining of the kammic consciousness. That is how karma is created, based on consciousness. When this consciousness comes to growth, it brings rebirth in the future. This consciousness sustains the mind and body. Now, I have to also tell you that the Arahant and also the Anagami, the last two stages of spirituality, their kind of consciousness does not create karma for rebirth. It's only the others that create karma for rebirth. Because we'll see why, right? The Buddha explains how the nutriment consciousness should be seen. How should we see this? Now this is another simile. When a bandit is caught and brought to the king orders that the criminal should be struck with 100 spears, that is maybe 100 arrows or maybe 100 pointed, some kind of pointed instrument, 100 of them, right? To be given 100 such spears in the morning. Now, if he's still alive, then in the noon again, 100. Then if he's still alive, again in the night, in the evening, another 100. Now, 300 spears like that. Who can endure? Now, see, here, now let us see what it really means. Here, the king represents the karma that we do. The criminal is the worldling, the ordinary person. The 300 spears is the rebirth consciousness. The resultant suffering in the course of existence after being reborn is the pain from the spears. So can you see how the Buddha shows in very dramatic style, that the suffering in the world, which we don't think about, we just go on living, thinking, oh, that will pass, that pain will pass. And we don't think of what it really means, right? So that is why Buddha is using this kind of analogy or simile. When the nutriment consciousness is fully understood, when you understand it fully, name and form is fully known. Now, what is name and form? Name is the mind. Form is the body. Name and form, the body and the mind. You can understand this body and mind when you understand consciousness. The sharp arrows of conscious awareness plus the results of past cravings and ignorance pierce us throughout the day. Now, let me explain that a little bit. Now, see, the sharp arrows of conscious awareness. Conscious awareness. Now, that word you can understand, right? These are called sharp arrows, right? Plus, and added to that, the results of past cravings. The past cravings may be the past from our own, this same life, past life of this existence, or it could be from some past rebirth, right? So these, and added to those karma, there is ignorance. Now these are the things that pierce us throughout the day. Getting angry with somebody, comparing yourself with somebody, worrying about something, all these things, right? Not just one thing. We think of it as one thing, but all these are connected. So the consciousness carries many experiences, etc., from the past, and these play an important part in rebirth, so that we carry it through. We don't forget what has happened in the past and then start a new life, right? So this simile brings images of extreme suffering and danger. They are meant to disturb and take away our complacency about willing and knowing, right? One learns that it is suffering that is nourished and looked after by the 4 nutriments. By taking these 4 nutriments, that doesn't mean that you should not eat, that you should not live, but you must understand that these 4 nutriments are what brings us suffering. Now, Vijnana Ahara plays 2 roles. The first is, if one cultivates the consciousness that takes one to hell, that is called apayagami vijnana. Apaya is hell. Apayagami means that takes you to hell, right? The vijnana, the consciousness that takes you to that place. Hellish consciousness, we can call it. By doing extremely hateful, greedy actions, vijnana will keep generating kama bija. Bija means seeds, and energy that fuel a new bhava or life in the apaya or hell. When one attains stream entry stage, now even if someone has done all these bad things, if someone attains the stream entry stage, right, one will automatically stop generating any more such karma. But those ones that you have already created will still remain there. Maybe you will feel the results too. However, after someone attains stream entry stage, his or her mind will not start a rebirth cycle with an apayagami vijnana, because that level of ignorance has been destroyed. Now, at each level of spirituality, you let go of some of the ignorance. At the next level, some more, like that, till you reach the Arahant level, where you give up all the ignorance. And that kind of consciousness is called Pabassara Chitta, without defilements, a purified Chitta. As long as one has Vijnana, one will be born somewhere in one of the 31 realms. This is why Vijnana is called a food for the mental body. As one advances in spirituality, one loses interest in worldly things. For example, an anagami is not interested in sexual matters or such pleasures. Any type of vijnana is cultivated by thinking, speaking, and acting. Now, for instance, an alcoholic may talk about alcohol, about bars, about going there and taking others also. A gambler is also the same. So, and it might lead to other bad acts also, like stealing. When money is over, you might go to steal somewhere. Among moral people, the vijnana will be speaking, acting, thinking of good things like generosity, compassion, kindness, etc. In the Theravada tradition, consciousness or chitta and what we ordinarily think of as consciousness is really a series of chittas, momentary acts of consciousness occurring rapidly. Buddha says that consciousness doesn't stay here. When now say, I give you an example. Now supposing you want to see something, you have to focus your eye there. And the object is there, the eye is there, but still you don't see till consciousness comes there. So therefore, consciousness is not inside, it comes when you sense something. It comes through the senses. So that is what the Theravada tradition says. The consciousness arises through the senses, and every mind moment consists of an arising, altering, and vanishing process. Now, when something happens, you see it, it stays for a while, then vanishes. This process is what is known as the stream of consciousness. For each moment gives way to the next. As I told you about a thought moment earlier, this stream has potential to create thoughts and actions, so that it is termed nutrition or ahara. That is why it's called nutrition. Nutrition in any form is like a prop that supports an old house and prevents it from collapsing. You have, I think, I hope, I can't elaborate on these, though they need so, but I think you will be able to think about them more and understand it better. By Mano Sanchetana Ahara are meant the different kinds of volition present in the types of moral and immoral, mundane consciousness. Immediately after the rebirth consciousness, I told you about the rebirth consciousness earlier, Bhavanga consciousness arises. It's called the Bhavanga consciousness. We'll come to that. You will understand it. Bhavanga is called the subconsciousness life stream. It's called Bhavanga Sota in Abhidhamma. If all our experiences were not registered somewhere, in some way, we would not be able to remember, may not even know our parents, and may not be able to think at all. So this Bhavanga or subconscious life stream is the true and innermost nature of man, says Jnanati Loka Mahatera. Now, what I told you just now is from that Thera. Bhavanga literally means factor of life, usually translated as life continuum. The Bhavanga Chitta sees that there is a continuity in a life. You see, in the lifespan, there is a continuity. That is the Bhavanga Chitta that does it. So that the being is kept alive. When there is a dreamless sleep, Bhavanga Chitta is present at that time. So now all this is about the Theravada tradition. Now I come to the Mahayana tradition just for your information, a little bit, right? According to the Mahayana explanation of consciousness, there are 4 layers, namely mind consciousness, sense consciousness, store consciousness, and manas. These are the 4 layers. Mind consciousness uses up most of our energy. It is our working consciousness that makes judgments, plans, and it is our consciousness that worries and analyzes. That is the mind consciousness. By training the mind in mindfulness and keeping the mind in the present moment, the energy taken for worrying about the past or predicting about the future would be stopped. Now that is about the mind consciousness. Now we come to the second layer, that is sense consciousness. That is due to the 5 senses. It happens due to the 5 senses. The third layer of consciousness is the deepest one. It's known as the store consciousness. That is the one that is in Theravada called the Bhavanga. When compared, both Bhavanga and store consciousness have very similar characteristics. It's called store because it holds or keeps preserving information from the past, memories, etc., like the hard drive in a computer. Whatever the consciousness receives is stored there. It not only stores, but sometimes it processes also. Store consciousness operates in the absence of mind consciousness. It's able to do many things like planning, taking decisions, even without your knowledge. This consciousness dictates many of the things that we do. But if we understand it, we'll be able to influence it to make better decisions. Just like the mind consciousness and sense consciousness, store consciousness also consumes, eats. If one is in company, now this is just an example. If one is in company, you may absorb their ways and be influenced by them. That's why it's important to surround yourself with people who have loving kindness, understanding, and compassion. The fourth level of consciousness, known as manas, now this is all about the Mahayana tradition, right? But they are very close to the Theravada tradition if you look at it. Has a belief, the fourth one, manas, has a belief in a separate self, soul. The feeling and instinct called I am is very deeply seated here. When, Descartes, I hope you can remember Descartes, said, I think, therefore I am. His point was that if I think, there must be an I for thinking to be possible. As Buddhist practitioners, we can train our mind to look at everything as formations, conditions, and they are changing all the time. So they are all impermanent. That's all for you that I have for today. But if there was anything that you would like to be explained more, please ask. Was it clear to all of you, or do you want any explanations in any way? Please ask if you have anything, any puzzling, problems, anything.
It was very clear, Ayasudena, but a second reading will take me to understand the whole concept.
I'm wondering whether I should not give you the meditation today because it was rather a long talk. So since I have made it, I couldn't make it shorter so that you would understand it. At least I hope you did. And therefore, I thought I will not give you the meditation today. How about that? Do you agree?
It's up to you.
Pardon?
I said it's up to you.
Okay, so that's what I thought. If you all want, I can, of course, give you a little meditation just for a short. Shall we take about 5 minutes to think of what we actually did today, something like about, let us say, thoughts or feelings, right? Now, in the Satipatthana Sutta also, there are 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first one is about the body in the body. Second is feelings in the feelings. Then then like that, you get 4 foundations. So today, now I'm not going to give you any instructions as such, but what I want you to do is to sit properly. That is, you sit nicely, relaxed, comfortably with your hands in your lap, and take a few deep breaths and then close your eyes. I will tell you what to do. Now I think you are ready. So now just look at your mind, not the body. Now today we are looking at the mind. Now the mind will give you all kinds of thoughts. Now try to see whether it's a good thought or a bad thought. If it's a good thought, it's okay, but don't try to go through it and, develop it. But see, it's a good thought. Then let it go. If it's a bad thought, just drop it. Right? And if it's an emotion, again, do the same thing. See, feelings, emotions, thoughts. Now, I'm not going to give you any more instructions. Just for 5 minutes, see what comes into your mind. and try to see how you can deal with it. Were you able to locate any of the feelings, thoughts, emotions? They form into three kinds: pleasurable, unpleasurable, and neutral. So you could have any of those. Anyway, I leave it to you. Right. So I hope nothing like what happened last time will happen again. But who knows?
Who knows?
Everything is changing. So
Thank you. Thank you, Aya.
may all of you be well, happy and peaceful, and may you have a very successful spiritual Vesak. And we are having a Vesak program on, that is tomorrow. So any of you who are living close by, please come. We are having it at the Vihara.